Okay, everybody, Rampage season is upon us. To me, it feels like after every single Rampage, there's always a rider or two that everyone feels like got gypped or snubbed. Everybody feels like they should have scored higher, they should have won, or some sort of drama like that. Now, not many people know how Rampage is actually judged. What goes into a winning run? What are the judges looking for? What the heck is the scoring? What does that number mean? What is the difference between an 85 and an 88? That kind of stuff. So that's kind of why I wanted to make this video, because there is an actual formula. There are 4 criteria that the judges are judging everybody on. Some of them are as important as starting on day 1 of dig day, and many are only down to what happens on the competition day during your 2 runs. So that's what I wanted to cover today. Since we're returning to the 2018-2019 site, I will, for the most part, only be using examples from those sites, but except for one, but we'll sync that battleship when we get there. Now, like I said earlier, there are 4 major factors that the judges use when judging Red Bull Rampage. It is important to note that none of these factors are inherently more important than the other ones. They are all on even grounds. Each run will be scored between 0 and 100, but it's important to know that there's not like checking boxes in order to get like a backflip was worth 10 points, a caning gap is worth 10 points, or so on and so forth. The numbers is solely a way of visualizing and ranking the riders' runs between each other. So for instance, if we have 3 riders and A got a 91 and C got a 85, and they think B isn't better than A, but is better than C, they're gonna place B where they think, like, how close to A was it, or how far away from C was it? So if they thought it was obviously better than C but not quite as good as A, they're gonna give him like an 89. Whereas like if he thinks, oh, he was very, very close to A but not quite enough, they're gonna put them close to like a 90.5 or something like that. So like I said, there isn't like an exact formula to getting the number, but the important thing is the number is just a way of ranking the riders, first place, second place, third place, fourth place, and giving them kind of feedback to how close they were to beating the person ahead of them. Having gone over that, we'll get into our very first criteria. As you know, 10 days before the competition, the riders are going to show up to the event venue and begin digging their line. Now, this is, if there was a most important criteria, line choice would be it. Because once the competition starts and your run starts, you've already decided what your line is going to be. And so you've kind of capped yourself at how many points you can get. Tricks while enhance a good line, they can't make up for a bad one, which is so important that I don't think people understand. How technical was your line? How steep was your line? Did you choose the easiest line down the mountain, or did you pick a more difficult line down the mountain? Whether you had lots of features at the top of the mountain, in the middle of the mountain, at the bottom of the mountain, or did you have them kind of spread out? Did you hit multiple kinds of features, lots of drops, lots of like canyon gaps, and lots of trick jumps? Or did you mostly just stick to one or the other? All of these factors go into if you're going to have a good line. Now remember, you're ranking people's lines against each other, not necessarily 10 points for a canyon gap, 10 points for this. No, not like that. It is literally ranking lines against each other. Now, lots of riders and fans think there is a gnarly line because of 2 or 3 main crazy features. But a big part of line choice is how did you connect the 3 together? If you have a crazy feature at the top, a crazy feature in the middle, and a crazy feature at the bottom, but in the middle, you could have just plucked up those sections and put it at a bike park, it's not really going to score super well as maybe other ones where they're riding steep chutes or technical rock sections. All of this is super important when it comes to line choice. Okay, this next criteria is probably the easiest to understand. It is how big did you go? Kamzing said going big is timeless, and this is the category of going big, Air and Amplitude. Now, it's important to know that this does not include tricks. That is a completely different criteria. This is literally when your tires left the ground, how long did it take for you to come back in contact with Earth? How big did you go? Did you have one big jump and a bunch of tiny ones? Did you hit a bunch of medium ones? Or was every every single jump you hit death defying. Now, this can be kind of difficult to judge from the camera, because if you're not physically there, some jumps will look bigger than others just because of where the camera is located. And so you have to remember that the judges before the competition, at least they've done this the last couple of years, go and measure every single feature on everyone's line. So they know ahead of time how big the jumps are. Obviously, where they land on those landings can extend that a little bit. If you overshoot a jump or case a jump, that's going to take away from your amplitude. If you boost it really high versus just skim it really low, all of those things matter when coming to air and amplitude. But at the end of the day, whoever goes the biggest is going to get, I guess, the highest ranking in their air and amplitude. Next, control and fluidity. Now this one is a little controversial because it is really fun to watch Rampage riders hold on and save a line that they should have crashed on, right? Then to look out of control, look super erratic, but that does not score on a Rampage run. In fact, a lot of the best runs look boring because they were in so much control, had so much fluidity that it looks boring. They literally just carved down the mountain. Even though it's a crazy, insane line, they score really, really well because they looked in control. They looked composed the entire time. Trixon style is the next category, and it is probably one of the biggest reasons why we watch Rampage. It is not only impressive to watch people hit these crazy big features, but then to add tricks on top of that is absolutely insane. And in kind of our next section, I'm going to talk about why tricks are so important, because they absolutely enhance the features you ride. However, tricks do not make winning runs. They enhance winning runs, and they might give they're kind of the fairy dust or the bacon bits of Rampage lines, but they do not make the line. If you do not have a good line, if you do not have good air and amplitude, and if you did not ride it with control and fluidity, your tricks will not matter. Okay, it all ramps together in one big package. That's why a lot of people thought were confused why Bienvenido Aguado didn't score better last night. He had an absolute banger trick in the middle, but the rest of his line, the beginning and the end, did not have what it took to really put him much higher than everyone else. So again, super important to remember that. Now, when we're talking about different features, when we're talking about different tricks, it is important to remember that there are two words that get thrown around a lot, and that is difficulty and that is risk, or some people call it like exposure, stuff like that, but difficulty and risk. The difference between difficulty and risk is difficulty is how difficult is the task, how hard is it to do it, whereas risk is if you don't do it, what could happen? How bad can it go, right? And so obviously you're going to hear lots of things like exposure, risky, dangerous. All that is talking about the same thing. That is not talking about how difficult it is to talk about. And this is where our ship sake from last year is going to be brought up. Now, the reason why this is so important is do not get confused. They are not the same thing. So if you're a veteran to this channel, you're going to recognize this graphic, but this is super important to understanding how different features are kind of, compared to each other, right? Low difficulty and low risk options. This is the bottom right quadrant. This is going to be a trick jump at the bottom of the course or an equivalent to it. They are things that are honestly not for Rampage riders, not that difficult and not that risky. Many of these riders have jumps this size in their backyard, let alone driving halfway across the world to ride it, and now it's just made out of red dirt and sand. Low difficult and high risk things are going to be like the battleship from last year. This is probably, everyone was so worried, like, why didn't this score better? Like, why didn't runs with this do better? The reason why is very simple. If that feature was 5 feet off the ground made out of pallets in a parking lot, it'd be scary, but it really wouldn't be that big of a deal. It's not hard to do. The reason why it was so talked about is because if you fall off the battleship, you're gonna die. Like, there's no question about it. You're gonna die. You're gonna tomahawk down the mountain in 4K television on ESPN. Like, that's not good. Like, you're going to die. But is it actually that hard to do? Not really. Like, you kind of jump on. Can you ride straight? and then you kind of fall off the back. Like the drop off the backside wasn't necessarily that big. So for Rampage riders, that is an example of a high risk, low difficulty feature. So what is an example of something that is high difficulty but low risk, right? And I have to use a trick because there's not a lot of these here. But in 2019 or 2018, in 2019, Brandon Summick's Fast Plant 360. This is a super difficult trick to do. But it's on a very low difficult jump at the bottom, but he made more difficult using a trick. Now, what's an example of a high difficult and high risk feature? And that would be some of these major drops on the Rampage course. The example I'll use is Simon Godziak's Price is Right drop. I think it's like 65 feet to where he would realistically land. Tricks are used to increase the risk and difficulty of features. That's inherently what they are. Like I said, they are the pixie dust or the bacon bits of Rampage runs. Tricking high risk, low difficulty features, that's going to increase the risk. Tricking high risk, low difficulty features, that increases the difficulty. And tricking high difficulty and high risk features will always be a component of podium or winning runs. Now, if you're interested in the course and you don't quite remember what was the 1819 site, or if you're new to Rampage, you're like, I didn't watch Rampage back then, I have no idea what's going on. Please subscribe to the channel because in a couple of weeks, I'm going to be releasing a video. Me and some friends got to walk around the 2018-2019 Red Bull Rampage sites and got to kind of see what the conditions were. And we also went over a couple of iconic features, and then I tried to ride it. How did that go? Well, you'll have to subscribe and see that video to find out. So thank you all for watching. And without further ado, peace.